Hello, hello, my fellow creatives. Welcome, welcome. I am Imani the writer, and this is the Healing Creative Podcast, where I, a Black girl creative, take you along my healing journey. Feel free to join me. So today's topic is a very important one. How do we best support victims of violence or toxic relationships while protecting ourselves? I decided to talk about it because I've been keeping up with the Diddy trial, and I was very interested in some of the nuances in Cassie's former friendship with Kerry Morgan. Now, I want to be 100% clear. I want y'all to be aware of my stance on things. We support Cassie here on this channel. We support victims on this channel. We do not support abusers at all. So if you come in my comments talking crazy about Cassie or Kerry or any victim or say anything in support of Diddy, period, you will be blocked. 100%, I will block you. I don't do that here. No. If I catch it, I'm going to clock it and I'm going to get rid of it, period. But I do want to talk about something that happens often in cycles of abuse. Something that I myself have experienced firsthand and something that we see outlined in the relationship between Cassie and Kerry, which is the way abusers alienate victims from their friends, from their family, and from their loved ones. And sometimes it gets so bad that even long after the victim or survivor has left the relationship, has left the abuser, even if they've been safe for years and years and years, that relationship that they had with their friends, family members, and loved ones is still broken, or at the very least heavily strained. Now, it's so easy to support victims on the internet, right? To say you stand with someone that you never met, that you never actually had to stand next to in your entire life. It's easy when you're a million miles removed from the situation. But what about when you are in it with your loved ones? When you see the impact on them every day? When the impact is starting to impact your own life and your other loved ones? It's tough. It's hard. It's very difficult to see that. It hurts to see your loved one being hurt. It hurts to see other people being hurt. And another thing that hurts deeply is when that same loved one that you've supported betrays you and chooses their abuser over you. But the thing is, it's very common, and there's a reason why it happens, legitimate reasons why it happens. There's a lot psychologically happening here. And today I want to explore those reasons with you guys. I want to explore why this happens, what we can or should do if we find ourselves in Kerry's predicament. Not that I'm blaming Kerry at all. And if there is a way, how we can best support our loved ones who are going through this very difficult time while staying safe and keeping ourselves out of harm's way. Now, please, please, please bear in mind that our goal here is to show empathy and compassion for both Kerry and Cassie, as they are both victims of violence, and violence at the hands of Sean Diddy Combs. That's my stance on this discussion. And if that's not yours, this podcast episode probably isn't for you. And also bear in mind that as we are discussing the Diddy trial, we may discuss themes of DV, domestic violence, sexual violence, abuse. And again, while the primary focus is on safety, please, please, please prioritize your mental health and emotional well-being. And be sure to check the description box for any additional resources. And feel free to share any resources that you are also aware of that might help someone struggling in a similar relationship. Any resources that you guys know of will be deeply, deeply, deeply helpful. It could save somebody. It really could. So if you got them, comment them down below as well. But okay, let's get into today's topic. Before we really begin, I wanted to give a summary of Kerry's testimony in the Diddy trial. But honestly, why do it myself when there are so many incredible and talented content creators out there already doing the work in the journalism aspect? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are like, it's real journalism that they got going on, really telling pop culture news and everything like that. So I am going to link their videos in the description box below, but because I know some people are not necessarily going to go all the way over there to watch the full videos, I'm going to include some clips from the Kempire channel. The Kempire channel, I've mentioned it in a previous podcast episode. They are doing daily breakdowns of the Diddy trial, daily summaries, and they're pretty expansive. He's using different sources, like utilizing different sources to really come up with a really solid summary to present to us, which I really appreciate. Sloan also he's not doing day-to-day summaries, but he did a video briefly talking about Kerry's testimony in court. I'm going to share them with you now so that you can watch, so that you can listen, so that you at least have the context that you need to be able to participate in this conversation that I'm about to have with you guys. If you already know everything that Kerry testified about in court, feel free to skip, but let's go into that right now. Here are the clips summarizing Kerry's testimony in the Diddy trial.
Kerry Morgan, the woman Cassie Ventura described as her former best friend, was called to the witness stand by the government once Darmashaw's testimony was concluded. Ventura testified last week that she met Morgan when she was a teenager, and the two remained close for about 17 years.
Kerry actually met Cassie when she was 16 and Cassie was 15 back in the year 2001. And they became roommates in 2004. That Cassie was confident when they first met, but she lost her confidence over the course of their friendship. And again, they were friends from the year 2001 until about 2018. Now, Kerry must have seen a lot. I mean, you are best friends with Cassie, so if she's going to talk to anyone, she's going to talk to Kerry or just be around Kerry in general. So she would see Diddy constantly calling Cassie's phone, and she saw much more than that. She even saw Diddy attack her several different times. In one instance, pulling her hair and pushing her to the ground. In one instance, Kerry actually asked Diddy's security to go and intervene, like, hey, go stop this. But they said they wouldn't do anything. At that moment, she grabbed up Cassie and they went and left the house and hid on the stairs of a neighbor's house as security and Diddy searched the street looking for them both. Eventually, Cassie decided to go back with Diddy in that moment, and Kerry didn't want anything to do with it, so she went to her hotel. The second time she saw anything get physical, it was in Jamaica in 2013. Diddy left the room after telling Kerry that Cassie was taking too long in the bathroom. Then she heard Cassie screaming, so Kerry ran into the hallway, and she says the screams were guttural.
So Kerry Morgan described multiple incidents of Combs allegedly flying off the handle and beating Cassie Ventura with seemingly no provocation. Morgan first detailed an incident when she and Ventura were vacationing in Jamaica and Combs arrived halfway through their trip. Cassie had gone to the bathroom, and after a few minutes, Sean said that she was taking too long. And he left me, and then I heard her screaming. I went to the long hallway. They were coming out of the master bedroom, and he was dragging her by her hair. Combs then dragged Ventura outside and threw her to the ground, where she hit her head on a brick. Oh my gosh. She's lucky to be alive. I saw him drag her by her hair. I ran back to get my purse and phone so that we could leave. The prosecution says, "What did you see next?" Kerry says, "I thought she was knocked out. Then she got up and ran into a wooded area. What happened next?" Kerry says, "There were two golf carts in the driveway. I got in one and Sean got in another. We went in different directions looking for Cassie." The prosecution says, "Did you find her?" Morgan says, "Yes. Then we hid in a ditch, whispering, as Combs searched for them in another golf cart for hours," Morgan testified.
Kerry was also there during the 2016 incident.
She was the friend that Cassie went to after that incident at the Intercontinental Hotel, that famous video that we have seen, infamous video we have seen of Sean Combs.
Kerry claims that Cassie came over to her place the day after the incident. So really, Kerry was that friend that Cassie would confide in. And at that point, she had been staying with her ahead of a movie premiere. Cassie had a black eye. About 30 minutes after Cassie came home, Diddy arrived, yelling and banging on the door with a hammer. Kerry said she was freaking out and she called Diddy's security guard assistant, hoping they'd get him to stop. Cassie sat on the couch. Kerry said, "I don't think she cared if he came in and unalived her." Eventually, Diddy left, never getting access to the apartment. Police arrived at that point, but Kerry can't remember who called them. Cassie wouldn't cooperate with officers, and they left after Cassie refused to identify herself or to speak to them. As Cassie's going through all this, Kerry was there up until 2018 when she was attacked by Diddy in her apartment. Diddy let himself into the apartment when Cassie was in the bathroom, Kerry said. "He came up behind me and choked me and then boomeranged a wooden hanger at my head," adding that she had finger marks on her neck. Kerry said she gathered her belongings and left, telling an assistant that he's going crazy, he's lost it. Kerry claimed that she was planning on filing a lawsuit after the 2018 attack, but she didn't. She met up with Cassie about a month after the incident, and Cassie told her that she'd be receiving $30,000 from Diddy. At this meeting, Cassie told Kerry that she was over-exaggerating. Kerry did sign a non-disclosure agreement that day and testified that she hadn't spoken to Cassie since. And that is such an unfortunate end to a friendship. I mean, it seemed like Kerry was kind of her confidant until Cassie became overwhelmed with almost like this brainwash to where like you're now telling Kerry that she's being dramatic. I mean, your man attacked her. I think she has every right to be upset.
Morgan recounted the alleged assault she personally endured from Combs that ended her almost 2-decade friendship with Cassie Ventura. She testified that she was at Ventura's house listening to music when Combs came into the singer's apartment. Cassie was in the bathroom and Morgan said that she was in the living room at the time. He came up behind me and choked me and left finger marks on my neck and hit me in the head with a wooden hanger, Morgan told the court. Cassie was in the bathroom. It hit me behind my right ear. What did he express concern about? Who Cassie was cheating on him with? Who did you speak to about it? Kerry says, Ryan, Sean's old assistant. What did he do? Kerry responds, nothing, shrugs. I have not spoken with Cassie since. So this just confirms what Cassie originally reported when it comes to what happened between her and Kerry. Which is sad to me that these two have never spoken, even after she left Diddy. These two used to be best friends, and they still have not spoken since this happened. But I can understand where Kerry was like, I'm out of here. It's one thing that you're getting abused, but now I'm being abused, and I'm in a dangerous situation. Kerry Morgan said that she hasn't spoken to Cassie Ventura in 7 years, after Ventura allegedly failed to take her friend's side after an alleged altercation with Combs. The reason I stopped speaking to her was because she was not supportive of me after that incident, understandably. And a lot of friendships, for those that know friends that have been in domestic violence relationships, a lot of you probably can relate to the situation. Maybe not necessarily being abused by your friend's abuser, but ending the friendships because of that abuser. Even though Ventura eventually left Combs, married personal trainer Alex Fine, and is about to have their third child together, Morgan said the relationship remains broken. The witness says that she received $30,000 to keep quiet. She said that it was through him the money wasn't coming from her. She was the go-between, Morgan said. I did not demand money from anyone. She offered money to close the case on it so I don't sue anybody or say anything public about it. And remember, Kerry Morgan had been around their relationship for the good majority of their relationship. And that was her best friend. So she knew a lot of details. And that could have ruined him back then. We haven't spoken since, Morgan said. The last time I spoke to Sean was the night of the assault. And the last time I saw Cassie was when I signed the NDA. Kerry Morgan testified that though she urged Cassie Ventura to speak to the police about Combs' abuse, she refused due to what it would mean for her career and her livelihood. Prosecutor Meredith Foster asked Morgan whether she had ever spoken with Cassie about if she should stay with Combs. Morgan told the court that she and her former best friend would speak about it often. I wanted her to do what she wanted to do, but I told her that she should leave him. And she said that she could not because of her job, her car, her apartment. It was apparent to Morgan that after Ventura spent time with people associated with Combs, she did not want to leave him.
All right, you guys, thanks for watching that. Be sure to support both the Kempire channel and Sloane's channel. Links will be in the description box below to the specific videos that I have used in today's podcast episode. Let's talk about cycles of abuse. Victims may remain in or return to their abusive partners due to deep psychological ties known as trauma bonds, and these bonds form through cycles of abuse interspersed with kindness, leading to confusion and attachment. Here's the thing. No victim is a perfect victim, and no villain is a perfect villain. I feel like media and entertainment really just makes people, it boils it down to black and white. Like the good guy is always a good guy, and the bad guy is always the bad guy. Sometimes the victim hurts other people, and sometimes the villain does something nice. In fact, in these abusive relationships, they're oftentimes doing very deeply nice, kind things in between the abuse, in between the incidences when they are victimizing someone. And that leads to confusion. That's confusing because it's just like, it leaves the victim feeling like, well, yes, he did this bad thing, but he did all these wonderful, wonderful things for me. Is this really who he is? What's going on here? You know what I mean? We have to think about that. And we also need to think about additional factors like financial dependence. Cassie was very financially dependent on Sean Diddy Combs. Not only because he paid for everything, paid for her apartment, paid for her car, paid for her lifestyle, he was also her boss. Like, she signed under his record label. He was her boss. And we also have to be mindful of fear and isolation that can contribute to how difficult it is to heal, which is why I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to talk about the ways that abusers isolate their victims from their family and the way that that often looks. Like, we say that and we know that, but we don't always understand what that looks like in practice. Okay? Leaving an abuser is not just a matter of choice all the time, but it also involves overcoming significant barriers. Now, I want to give some information around victim alienation and how that works. And that works usually with isolation tactics. So what are isolation tactics? Abusers often employ various isolation tactics as a means of controlling their victims. I want to share an article with you guys, and I'm going to read a section of it out loud to you. The article is called How Abusers Prevent Their Victims from Leaving, a comprehensive list. So I'm going to read this section here about psychological manipulation tactics. Now, this is what it says. Abusers often isolate their partners from their support systems, such as friends, family members, mentors, and peers. This happens in a variety of ways. We can start with something small, like a negative comment about a close friend. And it kind of gives this like little back and forth scripts-ish to describe what the abuser might say and what the other person might say. The abuser says something like, "It's weird how Janae seems jealous of you. I don't think she's as good a friend as you think she is, Sienna." And Sienna will be like, "What do you mean? Why would Janae be jealous of me? We are really good friends." Abuser will say, "Something just feels off to me. She's not dating anyone, and I think she's jealous that we're dating. One time I saw her rolling her eyes when you were talking to some people about how we met." Sienna is confused by this. She decides to brush it off at the time, but the seed is planted. And now she's looking for any nonverbal cues or statements Janae makes that might confirm that her friend is indeed jealous of her. Meanwhile, the abuser starts building a wedge between Sienna and Janae and casually says something to Janae the next time he sees her and Sienna isn't around to hear it. "I know how close you and Sienna are, but it's kind of weird how she talks about you behind your back." And Janae will be like, "What do you mean?" The abuser says, "I just heard her mention how she thinks you're jealous of her because she's in a relationship and you aren't." Janae is like, "Huh? I'm not jealous of her. It's weird she would even say something like that." The abuser says, "Well, she's mentioned you being jealous of her a few times in front of me and some other people, so I thought I'd let you know." Janae says, "I don't know why she would say that. I need to talk to her." Abuser says, "Yes, that's a good idea. Please don't say I brought this up. I just thought you should know because I know you're a nice person and a good friend to her." Leaving the conversation, Janae feels hurt and confused and decides to meet up with Sienna. Janae says, "Hey, it was brought to my attention that you think I'm jealous of you. WTF? Sienna says, "Huh? I never said that. But apparently you rolled your eyes when I talked about how my partner and I met." Janae says, "I didn't roll my eyes. I mean, I don't get the best vibe from your partner." Sienna cutting off Janae, "What do you mean? Why can't you just be happy for me?" And then the abuser will continue building this wedge over time between Sienna and Janae by manipulating them and destroying their connection. As time goes on, the abuser will prevent Sienna from seeing Janae and make statements like, "I don't want you to see Janae anymore. She's not good for you, and you don't need anyone in your life who doesn't truly care about you as much as I do. I love you and want what's best for you." These tactics of isolation lead to very limited support options when exploring leaving an abuser because the social ties and supportive connections have been severed. We got to talk about that. I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened with Cassie and Kerry because we weren't there, but there's a very strong possibility that there's communication happening behind the scenes. Like, we know that Cassie's talking to Diddy when she's not around Kerry. And we know she's talking to Kerry about Diddy as well. You know what I'm saying? So when I know that before, because at some point they were like, she was like, "Oh, you're being dramatic. You're being over dramatic," right? But she's saying that after just leaving Diddy. So we have no idea what Diddy has said to her about the situation, especially since I don't think Cassie was there to witness Diddy hit her friend. So he might be saying like, oh, I didn't do anything. I didn't do that, da, 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 da. But Cassie wasn't there necessarily to see it. And she might just try to, but even though she knows him to be a violent person, she may just not want to believe it, that he did that to her. Or he might have said, who knows what he might have said, right? He might have tried to just use a bunch of different tactics, not just this one, but a bunch of different tactics to remind Cassie that, to make it feel like it wasn't a big deal. Because to Cassie, it wouldn't have been a big deal, right? He's done much worse to her than what he did to her friend. So maybe to her, it wasn't nearly as terrible as anything that Cassie herself had been through. And since Cassie herself, and this is not in judgment, but being aware on some level, even though Cassie was not happy and she was clearly suffering, she's willing to stay, given that Diddy was paying for everything. In her mind, maybe Kerry should have also been satisfied with money, And that's a good chance how that conversation would have went. But again, that's not just Cassie speaking the way she normally would have. There's a lot of manipulation happening there. We don't know what Diddy could have said to Cassie behind when Kerry wasn't there. We don't know what Kerry would have said about Diddy when he wasn't there. We don't even know if Diddy and Kerry had conversations when Cassie wasn't there. We have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. But these things definitely happen. I've definitely experienced it in my own life where the abuser would tell lies about things that many of us would have said around our loved one. And because it's hard, because I don't want to explain too much. I want to maintain a certain level of privacy. This is just not my story to tell and put up on the internet. But I've seen this before where the abuser would tell lies about all of us, about things that we said, about things that we've done to put a wedge between us. And it worked. But the thing is, it worked over time. It wasn't just the one time, right? So that's an example of why these things happen. I'm also going to leave some additional articles in the description box below so you can read them. According to domesticshelters.org, victims may find support systems eroded, not only due to the abuser's actions, but also because friends and family might withdraw support after repeated attempts to help are rebuffed, or when the victim returns to the abuser. And again, just like we're not going to blame the victims for that, because there's reasons why they might go back. There's reasons why they might not leave. We're also not going to blame their support systems for withdrawing, because again, it's easy to say to support victims when you are so far removed from the situation. You have to bear in mind that in Kerry's situation, things were starting to spill over into her own life. Diddy was breaking down their apartment door to get to Cassie. That's her house too. That's her home too. And now he's put his hands on her as well. So we're not necessarily going to blame Kerry at all, or people in her situation. This danger started to spill into her own life. But we don't blame, it's always the abuser's fault. It just sucks that this is how we got here. It sucks how it impacts everybody. It really does. So another reason, and these reasons it's not like it's just one reason, right? It could be multiple things going on at once, and most of the time it is. But sometimes we have to talk about the way victims cope with these situations while they're in them. Oftentimes victims may minimize or deny the abuse that they're suffering through due to fear and shame, and oftentimes the hope that the abuser might change or the situation might change for the better. And that denial can strain relationships with those who are trying to help, leading to further isolation. So one thing that could happen is that maybe Cassie was minimizing the abuse that she was experiencing with Combs. And because she was minimizing her own abuse, of course she's going to minimize the assault on Kerry, because if she's been through all of these things with all of these freak offs and all of these beatings, him hitting her with a hanger and choking her once is not going to feel like the biggest deal to her if she's minimizing all this other stuff, right? Which makes Kerry and people in her situation feel like, well, how are you just going to dismiss how I'm feeling? Why would you do that? You know what I mean? Because when you're minimizing what I've been through, I've never done that to you. You know what I mean? So there's it, and that's how it can lead to a breakdown in the relationship. And also just the times, if it's repeated cycles, if they leave and return multiple times, it can oftentimes lead to frustration among friends and family, especially if it's something that had been going on for years and years. Eventually, they may just withdraw their support altogether. It's just like, okay, I just can't bother. I'm throwing my hands up in the air. There's nothing I can do. And this is just, especially if it's been spilling into their own life for years and years and years, that leads to frustration and leaving the victim feeling even more isolated, which can suck. I hate that happens, but I completely understand both sides, both the victim and their support system, for how this happens. And it's nobody's fault, really. Now, sometimes their support system is in support of the abuse. Now, that is not okay. We got to talk about that. I don't think that has anything to do with Kerry and Cassie's case. But sometimes, and I feel like I've noticed this a lot on the abuser's family side. I've seen this play out in my own life, but the abuser's family side is in support of the abuser. Even if they're not necessarily in support of the abuse, they are against holding the man accountable. They are against holding the abuser accountable. They make excuses, they minimize, they protect them to defend their loved one, to defend their family member. And that oftentimes makes the victim feel very isolated and alone as well. I want to dig in a little bit deeper to understand victim betrayal in abuse dynamics. Specifically, when victims of abuse may at times side with their abuser, defend their abuser, even when their abuser is extending their harmful behavior to others, to the victim's friends, to the victim's family, and sometimes even to the victim's children. This phenomenon can be attributed to several factors. And I wanted to talk about this because I feel like we're not talking about it enough, because we want to support victims and we want to protect victims. And I understand that. And I support that 100%. So we don't want to blame them, right? So we don't necessarily want to talk about the ways in which sometimes victims of abuse defend their abuser even when they're harming other people. But we have to talk about this because I feel like by not talking about it, we're exposing victims to even more potential harm. We're putting them more at risk, right? Because what ends up happening is that when victims betray others, when victims side with their abuser, when their abuser is hurting other people, it's shocking to us, right? We don't understand it. It's like, what the fuck? It's the last thing in the world you would have expected from them. The last thing you could have possibly expected from them. And you don't know how to navigate it, right? How do you navigate it? And it's hurtful. It's deeply, deeply, deeply hurtful. And because we don't understand why it's happening, because it's so shocking, because we don't expect it, that's a big part of the reason why we withdraw all of our support altogether. And that's understandable. That's understandable. But we have to talk about it so that people understand it, so that people can clock it, so that people can recognize it. It's not as shocking. And having that information will be able to help us move forward and figure out if there is a way we can support this victim through this difficult time while still keeping ourselves safe. That's the point of this conversation that I really want to drive home. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record about it, but I really just want people to understand and to hear why I'm talking about this. This is not to blame victims at all. At all. But when we don't talk about the behavior, then when we see it, we'll want to run away. We want to withdraw and keep our distance to protect ourselves for self-preservation. And that further isolates them. So we have to have this conversation. Again, when we see this behavior happen, it can be because of trauma bonds. Oftentimes, these cycles of abuse and reconciliation lead to even stronger emotional attachments, right? because sometimes it just feels like, how do I describe it? Like FK Twigs was on the Man Enough podcast and she described it so beautifully, where it's just like, maybe I'll include a clip of it, but it was something like upon learning more about abuse and how it happens, it's just like, oh, it's so boring, because I thought this was such this big thing that we are struggling together, and it made us stronger, and it made our love more powerful. But in actuality, it's predictable. That's what they all do. It's food. I could have been anyone. I just happened to get a part in a film, and that's what opened the door for Shia LaBeouf to do what he did. But that's what the cycles of abuse kind of do. When something terrible happens, the reconciliation makes you feel like, oh, we've been through this terrible thing together, but now we can come back together. We can work it out. It makes us stronger. That's a feeling that we oftentimes feel. And it's just like, oh, now we're stronger because of it. And that makes it harder to leave. And oftentimes these trauma bonds can cause victims to prioritize the abuser's perspective over others, even when it results in dismissing the concerns of supportive friends and supportive family members. And in some cases, victims may even adopt the abuser's worldview. That's leading them to justify and overlook the abuser's actions towards others. We also have to talk about inner conflict, right? Victims may also be experiencing internal conflict when confronted with the abuser's harmful actions towards others. Sometimes to resolve this inner conflict and cope with their own abuse, they downplay the severity of it and rationalize the harmful behavior. And this coping mechanism extends to dismissing similar experiences shared by friends, shared by family, shared by loved ones. And we also have to consider the fear of retaliation. Standing up against the abuser, even in defense of a friend, can also pose significant threats and risks to the victim's safety. The fear of escalating abuse might even compel them to align with the abuser's narrative. As you can see, there are so many legitimate reasons why these things happen. And it sucks. It's so unfortunate when they do, because Cassie and Kerry have not spoken when Cassie was just like, you're over-exaggerating, you're being, you know what I mean? They haven't spoken since that day. Years ago. Even long after she left Diddy. They're still not friends. And that was a ride or die friend, you guys. That was a ride or die friend. And it's such a shame that friendship was never able to be repaired. And I think about my situation, right? Because I've been there before. I've been in Kerry's position before. Now that I have this information, I wish I had it earlier on in my life, because it sucks when your loved one behaves in similar ways. But I feel like, for me personally, what hurt me the most was not knowing why. Like in Kerry's point, it's just like, he hit me. Like, put yourself in Kerry's shoes. Like, he hit me. Why wouldn't you support me? Why wouldn't you care? After everything I've done, after all these years, being there for you through this insane relationship, after running in the woods. You guys, they were in the woods. Wasn't that what they said in Jamaica? They were in a woodland area. They were running it sounds like a horror movie, you guys. It sounds like an actual horror movie. They were running in the woods. Cassie ran in the woods. And then Diddy and Kerry looked separately, looking for Cassie. And she found Cassie. And it was just like, so I'm running in the woods for you. I'm hiding in a ditch with you after putting myself in danger for you. Why would you dismiss my feelings like that? Why would you tell me I'm being dramatic or over-exaggerating? How can you sit there and try to be this go-between to help Diddy pay me off to keep quiet? How could you do that to me? Like, that's probably what Kerry's feeling in these moments. And when you don't know the reasons why, you start filling in the blanks yourself. You're like, oh, she must not care. She must not care about me. She must not care about me more than him. She must care about him more than me. She must love him more than me. She can't possibly love me, but that's not true. There are so many things at play, and I wish I knew that in my situation. I completely understand Kerry's decision I look back on my own life and I wish that I had the why back then. Because if I did have the why, if I did understand, I probably wouldn't have left the way that I did. Now, granted, I still would have left, okay? I don't regret leaving. I don't regret taking that distance and taking that space, because so much beauty and positivity and peace and productivity came from me taking that space. I've been able to build the foundation and the building blocks to create a life that I love, to create peace, real joy and creativity, and to heal. It was so hard to heal through things that would happen when things were always happening. You know what I mean? Like, I look back on my situation, and it would be like a thing would happen, an incident would happen. It would take me days to unpack it and to heal and to reframe and to be okay and to get back up on the horse and to get back to work and to be functional again. And the second I do, another incident happens. You know what I mean? Like, you can't heal in constant chaos. It's so hard to do that work. So I'm glad that I took the space that I needed, but I still wish that I had the why, because I wouldn't have left in the way that I did, because I was angry. I would have left more lovingly. I was so angry. I was pissed. I was livid. And I'm not going to invalidate my reasons for being angry in that moment, because I had legitimate reasons to be angry. I also said hurtful things, and I did apologize for the things that I did say at the time, because I can at least logically recognize that that behavior is wrong regardless, and that I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't treat people that way, and I shouldn't do it again, and it hasn't happened since. But now that I have this why, because back then I did it just because logically it is wrong and I should take accountability and take action steps in my own life to ensure that I don't blow up on people like that, just for my own sake, for my own life, right? I was thinking about it logically from that point. But I do emotionally look back at those moments, and I do regret it a little bit more the way that I left, but I still don't regret leaving. I refuse to bully myself into feeling terrible, though, because I'm always going to be proud of myself for doing what I have to do to protect myself. I'm proud of Kerry for protecting Kerry. You know, you have to look out for your own safety, for your own emotional well-being. And that's the point of this podcast, right? This is the Healing Creative Podcast, to do that healing and to do that learning and to grow and to be better. So I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I was younger, and at the time, that cycle had been going on for a long time, over a decade in my own life and in Cassie's. Their situation is a lot crazier, but for my sake, in my situation, it's been something that had been going on for over a decade, really my whole childhood and well into my college years. So I'm not going to blame myself for wanting it all to just fucking stop, like right then and there, like immediately. Like I just didn't have it in me anymore. I wanted peace. I wanted quiet. And I wanted it right then and there. I did not want to wait one more damn second. And that was what I felt like I needed to do to have that peace right then and there, was to just leave and distance myself completely. The point of this discussion isn't to make you feel bad in any way if you relate more to Cassie, if you relate more to Kerry in any way, shape, or form. The point is to have this discussion so we know that this is a common issue, and to be educated enough to get ahead of it so that we can anticipate it, we can clock it, we can recognize it when we see it, and maybe choose something else, maybe try something else that would be more helpful, that allows those relationships to not be completely severed, to allow for supporters to continue to be able to support, for victims to not completely be isolated and alone, so that the abuser doesn't win, right? The point is to give us as supporters the clarity that we need to be better supporters to our loved ones and still be able to stay safe. It's so important that we do so in a way that keeps us safe. So let's start having that discussion. Like, how do we set boundaries while still supporting our loved ones? People in abusive relationships or toxic relationships often feel trapped in cycles that are incredibly hard to break emotionally, psychologically. and oftentimes financially and legally. But at the same time, we have to remember that being a victim doesn't absolve you from the choices that you make that impact others, right? There's a way, especially when you possibly expose loved ones to harm, we have to be able to set boundaries. We can love our loved ones, but still set boundaries. The first step, I feel, is to remember what you deserve. Empathy doesn't mean you enabling others or abandoning yourself in the process. This is something that it really took me a minute to learn, how to have empathy, how to show empathy without doing that. Because I felt like, and respectfully, I felt like that was what was expected of me. To enable, to abandon myself, to prioritize someone else just because they may be going through something more difficult, just because they may have it harder because of the situation that they're in, that I should abandon my own physical and emotional safety for them. That's not what empathy is. And setting boundaries is not you abandoning your loved one either. Your loved ones being in toxic relationships, that does not at all cancel out your need for safety and peace. We have to remember that. Two things can be true at once. Your loved one is in a very difficult situation right now, but you deserve safety and peace just as much as they do. And you deserve to preserve your safety and peace. You can help them in ways that will help them achieve that same safety and peace. But you must preserve your own, right? You have to preserve your own. Doing what you need to do to protect your heart and your safety and your mental health is essential. No one else, especially when you're aware that no one else involved in this situation is going to protect it for you. If no one's going to care as much about your safety as you do. Sometimes that does look like loving people from a distance. Sometimes you're allowed to love people and still stay away. Sometimes you are allowed to forgive and still not go back. And you're allowed to choose your peace, especially when others won't protect your peace for you. And you're also allowed to come back. You are allowed to stay connected, but you're also allowed to set the terms for how that works. If you want to come back, you're allowed to set the terms for when and how you come back. Maybe it looks like dipping your feet in the water in some way. Maybe it looks like maybe not coming back fully or being around as frequently as you used to. Like if you lived with this person, it could look like moving out for sure. You may need that distance to live at a different home address, maybe, but it can still look like coming to visit. Or if you visit or hang around this person, you're with this person every day, it might look like every week. If you're with them every week, it might look like once a month. If you're already there once a month, it could look like once a year. Decide the frequency and the length and duration of time it makes sense for you to dip your feet in. But you can set the terms for how you are in this person's life. Look at your own situation and decide for yourself what is required for you to be safe. Is it physical distance? Is it the frequency? And maybe it looks different for you. And maybe you've decided that that bridge is burnt and can never be repaired, like the situation with Cassie and Kerry. That's also fair, especially if you've tried other things. Just always remember what you deserve and that you deserve to be safe and that you deserve to be at peace. This will help you decide what your next steps should be. And let's talk a little bit about what empathy looks like without self-abandonment. That's important. Saying with love, I care about you and I'm here if you need help leaving or finding resources. You can call on me for that. I can't get involved in your situation if it's going to put me in harm's way. I know this is hard and I don't blame you for struggling and I don't blame you for your situation, but I also need to protect myself. That's clear and that's loving and that's not shaming them. You're being honest about the ripple effects of this situation on you while still offering support within safety limits. I admit that in my own situation, I could have been nicer, but I'm not perfect, just like they're not perfect, you know? But we're learning now how we can start communicating and be able to support. It's important that when they confide in you about the situation, of course, you have to decide what that support looks like and what you can do. It could be listening non-judgmentally, of course. It's important when they confide in you to listen non-judgmentally and acknowledge to them that it is not their fault, but also set boundaries that you can't intervene in dangerous situations. You have to do something else, call for help, get the authorities involved if necessary. But you yourself can't put yourself at risk. And ways to show support without enabling can include offering help with these resources, sharing hotlines, DV support organizations. I made a previous podcast episode on this topic last week. I'll link it down below with safety tips, with other safety tips and resources, including hotlines and organizations that can provide support for you guys. If you are in trouble or if you know someone in trouble, that's there for you. It's important to validate their pain and validate their feelings without pretending that it excuses everything. It can also look like ways of showing support can also look like keeping the door open, but with boundaries, like saying what you can and can't help with. Like, when you're ready to leave, I'll help you pack. I'll help create a safety plan for you. I can help get in contact with organizations. I know it's overwhelming. I can be a part of that process to make the calls, to set up appointments, to be there with you, to drive you there, to drive you home, to be in the room if I'm allowed to be. I'll be there to support you in the process of leaving. While you're staying, I can't keep talking in circles. Because that's also emotionally draining, right? Because to keep hearing about the terrible things going on, like that's a lot over time. That's a lot over years, you know? This situation with Cassie and Kerry went on for years, right? But just always, like, if that is too much for you to handle, that's okay as well. Sharing resources and other people that they can talk to for help and support in that time. If you can't emotionally keep hearing it, that's valid too. But just keeping the door open when they're ready to take the steps needed. And if they behaved in ways that have a negative impact on you, it's okay to vocalize that, to name that impact gently, but clearly. Like, I'm not angry with you. I'm hurt and I feel unsafe. And I hope that we can rebuild. But right now, I need to take a bit of a step back for my own safety. You can say, like, I love you and I know you've been through a lot and I try to be there and I understand how hard it is to leave something toxic, but I also need you to understand that it's not just impacting you. I've been hurt deeply too. If there are others that have been hurt deeply as well, yeah, of course. And it's just like, no, I'm not blaming you. This isn't your fault. The only person at fault is the abuser. But I can't keep putting myself in harm's way. I am still here and I still care. But for me to stay connected, I need to feel safe and respected. These are valid boundaries. Now, I'm just, again, like I said in that previous video last week, I'm just some random bitch on the internet that cares, right? Like, I'm trying. I'm trying to educate myself, but I'm not going to get it right every single time, right? If you know better, if you know different, if you know other options to how to best support victims while keeping ourselves safe, please, please, please share them. Share them. These are difficult conversations. These are complex situations. We gotta give ourselves some grace for not always handling it in the best way, because these things shouldn't even be happening in the first place. It's the abuser that is at fault. I hope Cassie and Kerry can talk. If they decide that the best thing to do is stay away and to just move on with their respective lives, I completely understand that. But I hope that they can talk. And I do think that Cassie should apologize personally, just without necessarily blaming herself. Just be like, listen, what me and Sean had was insane and it was a lot and I never meant for you to get caught up in it. And I'm really sorry that you did. And I'm sorry that I didn't really take your feelings into account as much as I should have. And thank you for supporting me in all of the ways that I have. You were a good friend. And just move on. You know what I mean? I hope that, because they were close. They were best friends, and that sucked. I look back at my situation, and that's all I ever really wanted from my loved one, is to just be like, listen, I never meant for you to get caught up, and I hate that you did, and I'm sorry that I didn't really listen and take your feelings into account. And just maybe say, like, in the future, I'll try to be a little bit more mindful. even though, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily their fault. It's the abuser's fault. But just to respect any boundaries that I made, because I did try to set boundaries. You know what I mean? I did try to just be like, listen, I can be there for you, but I don't feel comfortable being in the same room with them anymore. My situation is a lot more complex too, because it's just like in the Diddy trial, there's like a clear victim and clear villain. You know what I mean? But mine is a little bit more difficult since there was more than one villain and there was a victim that started displaying abusive tendencies and is now grappling with trying to change and trying to grow and trying to heal. And I hope they're doing well on their journey. But yeah, that's all I ever really wanted is just like, hey, I know you shouldn't have gotten caught up, but you did. And I hate that happened. And I'm sorry that I didn't listen. That's all I ever really wanted. You know what I mean? Because I set those boundaries in place to protect me. And when they were violated, I felt like I was very angry and I was just like, okay, well, now I'm done with the situation. I think and I hope that I can work things out with my loved one while still maintaining my peace and my boundaries. I have moved and I'm moving again. So there's going to be at least a physical distance there, which allows me to feel safe, but I want to be safe enough to like be able to visit and to be able to talk and things like that. And I feel confident that me and my loved one will get there. But I hope that this podcast episode was helpful to you. I hope that you feel seen and that you feel heard and that you feel understood. Whatever position that you most align with, I hope that everyone who listens to this podcast is safe physically, emotionally, financially, in every way possible. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Take care now, you guys.